I also put a question on notice about whether you knew what the Plunge Protection Team was, which was the Working Group on Financial Markets, which is an organisation between the Federal Reserve and the Treasury groups in the States. It's probably fair to say that, like the Europeans and like the Japanese and like the Chinese and all major economies, governments do intervene in the workings of the market, along with the International Bank of Settlements. Do you think the fact that government interferes so much with markets makes a mockery of the ideology that we really live in a free market economy?
I think, in my personal view, I think there is some degree of government intervention in markets which is required.
Yeah, look, I totally agree with you. Yeah.
So I'm not, but I would still say that on the spectrum of degree of intervention in markets, then in Australia at least we're towards the
we're one of the lesser ones. And I guess that comes to the next question of, given that our currency, I think, is the fifth most currency, but we've probably got, I think, the 20th biggest economy in the world, are you concerned about the ability of foreign speculators to inflate our currency to more than it's worth, and just foreign interference in terms of currency speculation?
No, I'm not concerned.
Right, okay. That's fine, no worries. I also asked if you could give us a definition of capital, and the RBA replied, capital refers to productive assets, which combined with labour can be used to produce output. I would have thought Finance 101 said capital was defined as debt and equity. That's Finance 101.
I didn't know in what context you were asking what is capital. I mean, Karl Marx wrote a book on it.
I guess in terms of Treasury,
so there's capital's used in numbers.
Yeah, I get that, but you guys manage the monetary market. So
sure.
In terms of Treasury, I know you're economists, but you've also got an important role in Treasury, and they're two different skill sets, and it's very important.
I didn't know which context you were asking. I thought you were asking about capital as the Marxian sense, capital and labour rather than...
I guess, to me, the definition of capital is someone who's worked a long time, and it's pretty obvious. It's most people who work in finance know that capital is what's used to fund an asset or the purchase of an asset. It's either debt or equity.
That is certainly a definition. Now I know what you're asking.
Yeah,
I would agree if you're...
because,
question.
like I said, it's one thing to do economic modelling, but you're also, involved in, serious financial transactions, one of which is the Term Funding Facility, which was introduced last year of up to $200 billion, and that was to basically what I would consider protect authorised deposit institutions. Now that the economy is back on track, has that been repaid, or how soon do you think that...
So when the funding we provided under the Term Funding Facility was for 3 years. So from when it's drawn down, the last... at this stage at least, the final draw date is the end of June. So it will be 3 years from then when it will be repaid. I would characterise the purpose of that is to... of the Term Funding Facility was to provide low-cost funding to the financial system and hence to borrowers, both households and businesses, on the back of that. The evidence suggests that's exactly what's happened. We saw borrowing rates come down on the back of that. So I'd say it's working as intended.
Sure. I mean, I'd argue, and this isn't your responsibility, by the way, but if we can find $200 billion to underwrite banks or back them up, we need to find a similar amount of money to build some infrastructure and get the real economy moving as well. Has the RBA modelled what the inflation rate would be if it hadn't excluded land from the CPI in 1998?
So we don't make any decisions as to what's included and excluded from the CPI.
I realise that, but have you modelled what the inflation rate would be if land hadn't been excluded from the CPI?
No.
Right. Because that, to me, is a big part of when you justify lowering interest rates, you say inflation's low, but yet the CPI doesn't include the cost of existing housing or land. And let's face it, the average price of housing has risen by 7% on average over the last 30 years, and that's been excluded from inflation. And you have to ask yourself, had that not been excluded from inflation, could you lower interest rates? Because right now, I think we've got the potential of a housing bubble. We've got interest rates right down to, the cash rate's 0.1%. Home loans are going for 2%. There's only one way, and that's up from here. So I guess there's a lesson in this: is do we include inflation? The price of existing houses in inflation, and is that something that you should be taking into account when you're lowering interest rates?
I think the answer Dr. DeBell has already given indicates that that's not within the purview of the RBA, but...
Well, I mean, I know it's not in the definition of inflation, but the fact is that this asset bubble has created a divide between the haves with housing and those who don't have housing.
So we certainly take the effect of our interest rate decisions on house prices as something we take into account in the setting of our monetary policy decisions. It's some of that is the way that some of the of our policy actions are transmitted.
Sure.
To the economy.
So how do we get out of this now? We've got interest rates at 2%. We've got a big housing bubble. Interest rates are going to get up. How are you going to get us out of this?
So I suppose one thing to note, Senator, is if we hadn't provided this stimulus, we'd have a lot higher unemployment. So that's a choice that you have to make, right? Our mandate is to achieve full employment and low inflation. And so if we had higher interest rates, if we did not have as much monetary policy stimulus as we had as we've put in place, we'd be facing considerably higher unemployment than we have at the moment.
Well, I'd argue JobKeeper's done a lot to keep people employed. I mean, regardless of that, interest rates are going to go one way. Well, it's a serious
it's a serious
problem.
point. I'm not denying it's a point, but this is estimates.
I need to get confidence that these guys are going to be able to get us out of it without crashing the housing market and the economy.
Asking the officials questions. It's not about debating for them. I'm just. And
well,
you've had a pretty good go. We are short of time.
Okay, I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Rennick.